Thematic Analysis. Dr. Keely Abbott. Overview. Introduction to Thematic Analysis, TAR. What is TAR? Approaches and suitable research questions. An Introduction to Reflexive TAR, Braun and Clark, 2019. Strengths and Practical Tips. Practical guidance on how to conduct a TAR is taught in next week's lecture, see Moodle. Key terms. Transcription, the process of putting into the written word data which are in spoken form, for example. Interviews. Transcript, the write-up of data collected, for example, interview or focus group. Extracts / excerpt, quotes or segments of talk from the data. Dataset, a collection of data, for example, all transcripts from conducted interviews or focus groups. What is thematic analysis, TAR? Method for identifying, analyzing and reporting patterns of meaning, themes, within the data. Braun and Clark, 2006. The analysis of what is said rather than how it is said. Patterns, themes, are generated by the researcher. Rigorous process. Widely used qualitative analytic method. A method in its own right, Braun and Clark, 2006. Foundational method for qualitative researchers. What is thematic analysis, TAR? TAR is theoretically flexible. It is not tied to implicit theoretical commitments. TAR can be conducted in different ways, *continua rather than *. Inductive deductive coding and analysis. Bottom-up versus top-down. An experiential critical orientation to data. For example, experiential reports experiences and meanings, examines representation and construction of particular phenomenon. A critical, realist / essentialist constructionist theoretical perspective. What does this mean though? Most qualitative approaches are methodologies theoretically informed frameworks for research. Determines theoretical assumptions. Research questions, ideal methods of data collection, sampling strategies, and analytic procedures. TAR is a method, not a methodology. Exceptions to this, as some approaches to TAR adopt particular philosophical assumptions. What is thematic analysis? Kant. Works with a wide range of research question. Experiences, understandings, perceptions, practices, representations and constructions of a phenomenon, cultural rules, norms. It can be applied to different types of data. For example, interviews, focus groups, qualitative surveys, story completion, diary data, secondary sources, blogs, forum data, police reports. Works with large or small data sets. Produces data-driven or theory-driven analyses. Utilized in applied research, ethnography, action research. One method or approach. Three broad approaches, Clark et al., 2019. Coding reliability, approaches oriented around coding reliability, for example, Boyatzis, 1998, Guessed It. Al., 2012. Reflexive / organic, for example, Braun and Clark, Hayes, 2000. Codebook, approaches based on structured codebook and qualitative philosophy, for example. Framework analysis, template analysis, matrix analysis. Each has different processes and assumptions. Reflexive TAR. Approach by Braun and Clark, 2006. Renamed Reflexive Thematic Analysis in 2019. Differs from other approaches in terms of underlying philosophy and procedures for theme Development. Depth of engagement from researcher. Themes as pattern of shared meaning underpinned by a central concept. Why reflexive? Active role of the researcher. Questioning orientation, active dialogue with the self. Social justice agenda. Giving voice. Possibilities. Straightforward. Describes. Summarizes. Gives voice. Interprets. Sophisticated. Tells a story. Locates data / participants within the wider social, cultural, historical, political, ideological contexts. Interpretative. Theoretical / conceptual analysis. Makes an argument. Examples of research questions. People's conceptualizations or ways of thinking about social phenomena. Men's accounts of body image and appearance, Frith and Gleason, 2004. Women's experience of polycystic ovarian syndrome, Kitzinger and Wilmot, 2002. Heterosexual, bisexual and lesbian women's accounts of being childfree, Hayfield, Terry, Clark and Ellis, 2019. Media representations of female genital cosmetic surgery, Braun, 2005. How young people talk about intimate partner relationships, Abbott, Wekesser and Egan, 2020. 6 Phases for Analysis, Braun and Clark, 2019. Familiarizing yourself with the dataset. Coding. Generating initial themes. Developing and reviewing themes. Refining, defining and naming themes. Writing up. Analysis is not linear. Designed to be used as a tool that facilitates the process. Research example. Malik and Coulson, 2008. Topic / aim, examining men's experiences of infertility. Data type, forum messages on online support group. Sampling approach, selected messages posted to the men's room over 18-month period, 728. Messages / 52 threads. Analysis, inductive TAR conducted within an experimental framework. Generated 4 key themes. Themes. Supporting dearest partner is our key role. Men felt their role in the fertility treatment process was to support their partner, and they used the support group to gain advice on fulfilling their role. Us blokes are mere spectators in most people's eyes. Many men reported feeling unimportant and lonely in relation to the treatment process, which, for some, was compounded by the fact that many health professionals did not appreciate the emotional impact of infertility on men. Themes. Sometimes a male perspective is needed. Many men appreciated the emotional support and practical advice of other men going through a similar process. I don't want to get my hopes up, but I can't help it. Some men used the message board to articulate their hopes and fears with regard to the treatment. Many of these men reported conflicting and multiple emotions, and often an effort was made to suppress positive emotions. Research example. Anderson and Clark, 2019. Topic / aim, explore disgust and shame associated with, and the related psychosocial impact of skin picking. Data type, forum messages on online support group. Sampling approach, selected messages posted to the forum, 73 chronological posts dated 2004 to May 2013 and 27 chronological posts dated May 2013 to 2015. Analysis, experimental, inductive approach to reflexive TAR. Critical realist framework. Generated 3 key themes. Themes. Get out of my skin. Many accounts described being unable to tolerate anything that was experienced as abnormal and needing to get every last bit out with disregard for the damage done to the skin. I am shameful. There was a general acknowledgement that skin picking was a shameful experience. This shame was shown to impact on how individuals revealed their stories. Some acknowledged that they found it difficult to disclose despite the anonymity of the forum. No one must ever see. Throughout the data, there was an emphasis on hiding skin picking by carefully concealing any damage and by avoiding exposing situations. Research example. Beers and Farvid, 2010. /aim, young women's accounts of heterosexual casual sex experiences. Data type, semi-structured interviews. Participants, women aged 19 to 25. Analysis, deductive, constructionist approach to reflexive TA. Generated 3 key themes. Themes. 1. Care for the self. Self-care was explicitly evident in some women's reports of setting limits in casual sex. This was either in reports of activities they participated in or enforced, such as condom use, or the contexts in which they were willing to participate in casual sex. 2. Self-reflection. Some women interviewed often implemented self-care strategies as a result of reflecting on their previous casual sex experiences. Some women went beyond a reflection on specific casual sex experiences and reflected on their desire for engaging in casual sex more broadly. 3. Care for the other. There were a couple of women who talked quite deliberately about caring for the other. While these women were focused on forms of care related to physical health, other women demonstrated care for the other differently. For example, they reported concerns for their partner's emotional well-being and willingness to engage in casual sex activity. With the person next to you, discuss the following. What is the purpose of thematic analysis? Thematic analysis is theoretically flexible. What does this mean? What is the difference between inductive and deductive analysis? What is meant by latent and semantic analysis? What is the difference between coding and themes? Strengths. TAR is theoretically flexible, not atheoretical. TAR is a method, not a methodology. No specified theory, but the researcher should specify the theory the researcher is using. TAR can be used in a variety of ways. Versatile with different types of data. Hybrids / combination approaches. The qualitative systematic review, feminist TAR. Practical aspects. Sample size. How many participants? Can be applied to large or small datasets. Rough rule of thumb for UG, small projects 5 to 6 participants *. Data collection. When to stop. Less saturation and more information power. Malta Ard, 2016. Depends on the research question, method, sample, data. Analysis. By hand or using software. No one way but should be systematic. Things to be aware of. Analytic work is key. Themes don't just emerge. Ensure what you have is a theme and not just an overview / summary of the main things. Participants have said or trends, topic summaries versus stories, Braun and Clark. Topic summaries. Everything / main things participants communicated about a topic. Stories and shared meanings, patterns of shared meaning underpinned by a central concept. Multifaceted and may cut across topics. Tell a story. Things to be aware of. Themes are not your interview topics / questions. Analytic outputs that can't be identified at the start requires interpretative work. Theme development is a process and evolves. Initial themes are provisional and are refined. Naming of themes is important. Read TAR papers and practice coding data where possible. Examples of key concepts and steps. What does a transcript / data look like? Word-for-word write-up of what was said. Captures the exact spoken word, including pauses, false starts, errors. Speaker labels, identifies the person speaking. Line numbers. What does a coded transcript look like? By hand on printed transcript. Code in Word / Excel, using comment function. Having a go. Activity. Activity, applying phase 1 of TAR. The topic of these interviews is friendship research question. How do university students understand friendship when in higher education? These are extracts from 2 participants' interviews. Note, they are not the full transcripts but simply extracts from each interview. Task. Phase 1 of TAR, read through the extracts provided and familiarize yourself with the data. Write notes on initial observations. Discuss what is interesting in relation to the topic. Understanding of friendships, in pairs. Activity, coding, Phase 2 of TAR. Phase 2 of TAR, have a go at coding the data that is related to friendship. The approach you will be taking is inductive. Tips. Code line by line. Interesting features of the data. Simple label, more than a single word. Surface meaning, summarizes what is said. Asterisk next week, we will organize the codes into themes, bring your notes forward / transcripts. Resources. Textbooks. Clark, V., and Braun, V. 2021. Thematic Analysis, a practical guide. Thematic Analysis, 1 to 100, in Library. Websites. Braun and Clark Thematic Analysis website, https://www.thematicanalysis.net/. References. Braun, V. and Clark, V. 2006. Using Thematic Analysis in Psychology. Qualitative Research in Psychology, 3, 2, 77-101. Braun, V. and Clark, V. 2019. Reflecting on Reflexive Thematic Analysis. Qualitative Research in Sport, Exercise and Health, 11, 4, 589-597. Braun, V., Clark, V., and Hayfield, N. 2019. A starting point for your journey, not a map, Nikki Hayfield in conversation with Virginia Braun and Victoria Clark about thematic analysis. Qualitative Research in Psychology. A Practical Guide to Thematic Analysis. Dr. Keely Abbott. TW/CW for consent/assault. Overview. Reflexive Thematic Analysis, Braun and Clark, 2019. Methodological Procedure. 6 Phases of Analysis. Applied to Data. Tips for conducting a good quality TAR. Quality Criteria. Reflexive TAR, Braun and Clark, 2006. Familiarization with the data. Coding the data. generating initial themes, reviewing and developing themes, refining, defining and naming themes, producing the report. Phase 1, Data Familiarization. Repeat listening / reading of the data recording. Read through each transcript individually. Note down, on a separate piece of paper, items of interest. Read actively and critically. Assumptions. What is familiar / unfamiliar? TW /CW for consent / assault. Phase 1, Data Familiarization, Activity. Oscar, of course, like asking verbally for consent all the time can get awkward though and sometimes even ruin the mood, but it's so easy to tell though non-verbally when someone isn't into it. For example, you might go up to someone and put your arm around them, and if they step away, then that's immediately showing you that they're not consenting, and you know not to do that again. If you're interested in the person, you may talk to them a little bit more, and then when they show you that reciprocal, but then for most people it's easy to pick up on, yet some people might not be able to realize if they're not experienced with women or men. They might just not understand that. TW /CW for consent / assault. Phase 1, Data Familiarization, Activity. Initial agreement that verbal consent is important but impractical. Consent discussions are framed as questions here that can be awkward and kill the mood. Overly formal. Nonverbal consent perceived as simple and easy to understand, but only for the experienced. TW /CW for consent / assault. Phase 2, Coding the data. Line by line, or every two. Interesting features of the data. Interesting use of words, descriptive, phrases, repetition, interesting use of words, meaningful. To the area / topic of interest, acceptable. Phrases. Repetition. Meaningful to the area / topic of interest. Phase 2, Coding the data. Systematic and transparent approach. Code interesting features. Gather all data relevant to each code. Single meaning / facet in relation to something. Fine grain to get at the intricacies, what is analytically relevant and the underlying idea / concept / take. Codes identify a feature of the data which is interesting to the analyst, and that can be assessed in a meaningful way regarding the phenomenon under investigation. Boyatzis, 1998. p. 63. Analogy, Brinks of a house. Phase 2, Coding the data. Simple label / description. More than a single word. Identifies what is of interest. Captures meaning identified. Semantic, surface meaning, or latent, assumptions underpinning the surface meaning. Code by hand or electronically. Phase ends with a list of codes and all the data relevant to each code collated, important for next phase. Phase 2, Coding the data, activity. Oscar, of course, like asking verbally for consent all the time can get awkward though and sometimes even ruin the mood, but it's so easy to tell though non-verbally when someone isn't into it. For example, you might go up to someone and put your arm around them, and if they step away, then that's immediately showing you that they're not consenting, and you know not to do that again. If you're interested in the person, you may talk to them a little bit more, and then when they show you that reciprocal, but then for most people it's easy to pick up on, yet some people might not be able to realize if they're not experienced with women or men. They might just not Understand that. TW/CW for consent/assault. Phase 2, Coding the Data. Left off the 29th of October, 2024. Oscar, of course, like asking verbally for consent all the time can get awkward though and sometimes even ruin the mood, but it's so easy to tell though non-verbally when someone isn't into it. For example, you might go up to someone and put your arm around them, and if they step away, then that's immediately showing you that they're not consenting, and you know not to do that again. If you're interested in the person, you may talk to them a little bit more, and then when they show you that reciprocal, but then for most people it's easy to pick up on, yet some people might not be able to realize if they're not experienced with women or men. They might just not understand that. Verbal consent awkward. Verbal consent equals mood killer. Consent is displayed through reciprocity. Refusal evident through nonverbals. Experience with opposite sex. Necessary to understand refusal / consent. Refusal is clear. TW/CW for consent / assault. Phase 3, Generating initial themes. Collate the codes into potential themes, i.e. aspects of similarity and difference. Cluster all codes. Gather all the data relevant to each theme. A theme should effectively describe what you have identified as a key / distinct feature of the data. A theme captures something important about the data in relation to the research question, and represents some level of patterned response or meaning within the data set. Braun and Clark. 2006, 82p. Common question. What is the difference between a theme and code? Codes are more specific. Capture a single idea / meaning associated with a segment of data. Fine-grained and capture intricacies. Codes form the basis of theme. Phase 3, Generating initial codes. Codes. Body language is subjective / unclear. Verbal consent is rare. Consent is displayed through reciprocity. Verbal cues are black and white. Alcohol affects consent. Verbal consent is awkward / mood killer. Don't always ask, do you want to have sex? Alcohol means person can't consent. Easy to tell when someone isn't into it. Situational factors impact consent. Confidence affects consent. Body language speaks for itself. Refusal evident through nonverbals. Experience with opposite sex necessary to understand refusal / consent. Themes. These codes distinguish one sort of material from another. Some codes have more to do with one another than others. TW/CW for consent / assault. Body language is subjective / unclear. Verbal consent is rare. Consent is displayed through reciprocity. Verbal cues are black and white. Alcohol affects consent. Verbal consent is awkward / mood killer. Don't always ask, do you want to have sex? Alcohol means person can't consent. Easy to tell when someone isn't into it. Situational factors impact consent. Confidence affects consent. Body language speaks for itself. Refusal evident through nonverbals. Experience with opposite sex necessary to understand refusal / consent. Codes are groups in terms of similarities. TW/CW for consent / assault. Codes. Body language is subjective / unclear. Verbal consent is rare. Consent is displayed through reciprocity. Verbal cues are black and white. Alcohol affects consent. Verbal consent is awkward / mood killer. Don't always ask, do you want to have sex? Alcohol means person can't consent. Easy to tell when someone isn't into it. Situational factors impact consent. Confidence affects consent. Body language speaks for itself. Refusal evident through nonverbals. Experience with opposite sex necessary to understand refusal / consent. Themes. Codes are groups in terms of similarities. TW/CW for consent / assault. TW/CW for consent / assault. Experience with opposite sex needed to understand refusal / consent. Refusal evident through nonverbals. Codes. TW/CW for consent / assault. Phase 4, reviewing and developing themes. Start to identify the nature or character of this potential theme. Is this a theme? What does / doesn't it include? What are the boundaries of this theme? How does it relate to other potential themes? Are there enough, meaningful, data to support this theme? Check if the theme works in relation to the coded extracts and the entire data set. Generate a candidate thematic map, optional. Phase 5, refining, defining and naming themes. Assign a name / label to each theme or category. Avoid one-word theme names. Avoid topic summary names. Produce a definition / description of each theme. Refine the specifics of each theme and the overall story of your analysis. Theme 1, verbal consent are black, white and gray. Theme 3, consent is affected by situational and personal factors. Theme 2, body language conveys agreement and refusal but is open to misinterpretation. TW/CW for consent / assault. How to name themes. As quotes or verbal cues are black and white and gray. Body language is important but can also be subjective. It should be clear but it depends. As statements. Verbal consent should be black and white. Body language conveys agreement and refusal but is open to misinterpretation. Consent is affected by situational and personal factors. TW/CW for consent / assault. Phase 6, producing the report. Analysis consists of analytic commentary, data extracts and themes. Decide on the order in which to present your themes. Tell a story and move the analytical narrative on. Select vivid and compelling examples of data to illustrate each theme. Different participants. Phase 6, producing the report writing. Provide an analysis, not just a description, of each theme and specific excerpts included. Relate analysis to the research topic / question and to the literature. The write-up should refer to literature, for example this supports the findings of Blogs, 2010, and Smith, 1995, who identify. This echoes existing literature that demonstrates. Phase 6, producing the report. Remember what codes make up each theme. Helpful when writing up and for analytical narrative. Look back at grouping or thematic map. Factor in time to develop analytical narrative for themes and quotes presented. Requires analytical effort. Interpretation needed for each quote / excerpt presented. Example of next slide. Ben, I think men need to be more careful around the whole consent thing just because you hear More stories in the media and cases of where they've been either wrongly accused of rape and sort of ruined their lives, or you don't, although it can happen the other way around. You don't tend to hear that as much on the female side, and I think it's definitely important for men to get consent. Liam: yeah, definitely. Men are positioned as needing to be more careful based on the view that they are vulnerable to false allegations of sexual assault. This is evident where Ben refers to stories as a means of highlighting this risk, but only for the accused. In acknowledging that false allegations can also work the other way around, but making a point of highlighting the rarity of this, you don't tend to hear that as much, only further serves to underscore the risk for men only, with an emphasis on legal consequences of consent and a preoccupation with false allegations for men. Young People's Talk echoes previous work that highlights the way young people frame consent as it relates to sexual assault. Brady et al., 2017, Whittington, 2020, but this talk also highlights the way such framing also invalidates experiences of sexual violence. Coy et al., 2013. TW/CW for consent/assault. Tips for conducting a TAR. It's messy. It's not often a linear process, for example steps 1 through to 6. Analysis is a recursive process. You learn by doing. Coding is fundamental. Don't skip data familiarization, step 1, and coding, step 2. Themes are developed from codes and are used to help write up later. Avoid vague codes. Gender support. Things to consider. There shouldn't be too many themes, limited number. They should be analytically distinct, standalone. The theme titles should not repeat the research question. Themes should answer the researcher question. Themes should be supported with excerpts from the data. Select appropriate examples, those that highlight the point made most vividly. Don't let the quotes/excerpts do the talking. Common mistakes. Under-analysis. Not doing any analysis. Unconvincing and weak analysis. Too many themes or vague themes. Don't let the quotes do the talking. The researcher should interpret what data/quotes they present. Themes don't emerge. Avoid writing this in the write-up. Quality criteria, Braun and Clark, 2006. Quality criteria, Braun and Clark, 2006. Having a go. Activity. Activity, Phase 3 of TAR. The topic of these interviews is friendship research question: how do university students understand friendship when in higher education? Task. Using the transcripts from last week, have a go at creating themes from the codes you created last week. Make a list of the codes for Michael and Nadia. Phase 3 codes into themes. Michael. Nadia. Emotional support. Emotional support. Substitute /chosen family. Friends provide comfort. Lack of judgment. Lack of judgment. Lack of permanence /temporary. You can rely on friends. Friendship longevity. Friends provide closeness. Contact maintains friendships. Trust is key. Shared activities. Dependence. Friends important /necessity. Familiarity. Friends don't judge. Lack of permanence /temporary. You can rely on friends. Put the codes into groups. Tips. What codes are similar? What are distinct? Group codes across Michael and Nadia, list similar codes together. Create a list. Emotional support. Shared activities. Activity, Phase 4 of TA. Reviewing and developing themes. Task. Review the groups of codes and start to identify the nature or character of this potential theme. Tips. Is this a theme? What does / doesn't it include? What are the boundaries of this theme? How does it relate to other potential themes? Are there enough, meaningful, data to support this theme? Activity, Phase 5 of TA. Refining, defining and naming themes. Task. Assign a name / label to each theme or category. Avoid one-word theme names. Avoid topic summary names. Ensure they are titled in a way that answer the research question. Produce a brief definition / description of each theme. Feedback. Research question: how do university students understand friendship when in higher education? How many themes have you generated from this data? What are the theme titles? Reading. Clark, V., and Braun, V. 2021. Thematic Analysis, a Practical Guide. Thematic Analysis, 1 to 100, in Library. Braun, V. and Clark, V. 2020. One size fits all. What counts as quality practice in reflexive thematic analysis? Qualitative research in psychology, 1 to 25. 10.108047808887.2020.1769238. Thematic Analysis. Dr. Keely Abbott. Overview. Introduction to Thematic Analysis, TA. What is TA? Approaches and suitable research questions. An Introduction to Reflexive TA, Braun and Clark, 2019. Strengths and practical tips. * Practical guidance on how to conduct a TA is taught in next week's lecture, see Moodle. * Key terms. Transcription, the process of putting into the written word data which are in spoken form, for example. Interviews. Transcript, the write-up of data collected, for example, interview or focus group. Extracts / excerpt, quotes or segments of talk from the data. Dataset, a collection of data, for example, all transcripts from conducted interviews or focus groups. What is thematic analysis, TA? Method for identifying, analyzing and reporting patterns of meaning, themes, within the data. Braun and Clark, 2006. The analysis of what is said rather than how it is said. Patterns, themes, are generated by the researcher. Rigorous process. Widely used qualitative analytic method. A method in its own right, Braun and Clark, 2006. Foundational method for qualitative researchers. What is thematic analysis, TA? TA is theoretically flexible. It is not tied to implicit theoretical commitments. TA can be conducted in different ways, *continua rather than appositional *.